right, part 3. Now we get to start doing some soldering. Let me turn the soldering iron on before I forget. All right, we got that one on. Instructions, parts manifest, and circuit board. That's what we're going to look at today. Get our box of goodies out of the way. This is a beautiful circuit board. Man, I love this thing. I think this is the first circuit board I've seen that's got hand-drawn traces. I'm still just in love. I'm in awe. It's the, first-timer thing. Honeymoon's not over yet. I guess that's what I was trying to say. Honeymoon's not over yet. All right, so in the last video we went through and we nulled out all the parts. We verified that we have everything that we think we need in order to get started. And so now we get started. And they want some soldering iron temperature and some solder and some parts. For solder, I use Kester. It is the 6733 whatever flavor of leaded solder that is rosin core, so I'm not going to use a whole lot of flux. There's a link in the description to the solder and the solder station. I use the Hakko FX888D. I have built a lot of kits with this combination. It is fantastic. First thing we need is R1, which is a 10K resistor, which is this one, and it's already handy dandy folded over for us. Come on. So I'm gonna untape it, and now I gotta find R1 on the board somewhere. Huh, that's what I kind of thought would happen. Oh, that's interesting. So the R1 connection is right up here, and it's not clear which hole it goes into. See, R2 is much more clear. Oh, I see. Okay. It goes like that. All right, so I went and looked at R2. I did a sneak peek ahead and figured it out. Resistors don't have any orientation requirements. However, what I like to do when I'm putting these things in, first off, I'll put it in and I'll flip the legs over so it holds itself in the board. But what I like to do is I like to make it in the order of the color codes, which I can't read anyway, and then the tolerance band is on the end, and then I match them all up all the way throughout the board, just so it looks like I knew what I was doing when I put this thing together. Maybe I'll fool somebody, I don't know. But we'll take this and we'll get it soldered down. I run my soldering iron at 640 degrees Fahrenheit. Put a little solder on the tip of the iron. And what that does is that forms a little bubble of molten metal that will touch the pad and will touch the leg at the same time and form a nice little seal so that I can add some heat to it. And you don't need a whole lot of it. In order to get the job done. The next thing you're also going to need is a pair of these flesh cutters, and I'll have a link for that in the description down below as well. And then you just want to cut them flush. These legs are really short. I'm probably not going to save these. But there you go. First one down. Take our pen and we will check these off as we go, but it's also going to be fairly obvious that we got it done because it's going to be missing. I'm going to go through and put the rest of page 3's resistors on, and then we'll see where we are. We'll sync up again. Okay, that one was interesting. When I heated it up, it actually heated the solder that's underneath of the solder mask for the trace, and it bubbled up a little bit. So that is probably going to happen to all of these ones that have these thicker traces. And if you look at any older circuit boards, you will notice that that's kind of normal. So I'm going to keep on moving and not worry about it. All right, we are now done with page 3. We'll do a little recap as promised. One thing that I will say is these ones here where the trace bubbles up underneath of you, I would be quick with the soldering iron and mind the heat. Don't dawdle. Be very hasty, as they say. Another cool thing about the way this circuit board is laid out is you'll see it with R4 here if the camera glare doesn't get you. It's drawing a line down to where the part goes. This is X1, it's drawing a line over to where the part goes. C7, it's drawing a line over to where the part goes. That's pretty neat. I like that. All right, page 4. R16. I'm going to start getting into the 1K resistors. And what I do with these kind of resistors, you might have seen it earlier, is I will come in and I will snip and snip. And when I first started doing this, I wasn't doing it that way. But now I am. R16. This board so far is actually laid out fairly logically as well, which is nice. All of the numbers are close by, so 15, 16, 17. I feel like I'm going kind of in order, which is very nice to know. So next up are diodes. We've got diodes of D1 through D8, which are these ones right here. I'm going to go ahead and clip these all off all at once. And diodes have a black band on them, and usually there's some indication on the silk screen as to where that black band should line up, because these are directional. The whole point of a diode is that current is supposed to go in one direction and be rejected in the other direction. And these go down here on the keyboard connector, and you can see that there is what looks to be like a cross or a plus sign or something like that. So I'm going to put the band on the diode up towards the band on the board. They did go through and talk about how these things lined up in the instruction manual. So it says, insert the diodes into the board with the cathode ends corresponding to the flat bar symbols inked on the PC board. And so that's what we're going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all these in at once, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to solder them all in. And that will also help. What I have been taught is that you're supposed to mind your heat buildup on diodes. Too much heat is bad for them. And so in doing it this way, I wind up heating one side, and then when I get to heat the other side up, it will be 8 diodes away. All right, and that brings us to the end of page 4. And then D9 is not used. I don't know why they say D9 is not used. I don't see a D9 on here. I see D1 through D8. All right, now we're getting into the vertical mounted resistors. Now that we have inserted all the low profile flush mounted components, let us go back and finish up the resistors. There are 4 oblong boxes or rectangles labeled R7 through R10, R11 through R14, R18 through R22, R23 through R26. These all contain a row of resistors standing on end, like so. Take care when mounting these, use only the holes corresponding to the smaller box. Let's see what they're talking about. So R7 through R10. This is a very shiny board. Okay, so there's R7 through R10, there's R11 through R14, and R18 through 22 right there, and R23 through R26 right there. Okay, let's start off with R7 through R10. This is interesting. I haven't seen it done this way before. There's one great big outline. I don't know why they didn't use resistor packs for these. These are all the same resistance value. So R7, R8, R9, R10 are all 470s. So let me get 4 470s out. All right, so that looks like that works. That's space saving for sure. You can overthink things, you can get out your multimeter and you can trace it, or you can just get after it and it'll kind of make sense when you're done. I think that makes a whole heck of a lot of sense to me. So let's get them soldered in. All right, that brings us to the end of all of the resistors, and now we get on to resistor packs. On a resistor pack, what it is it is a series of resistors that all share a common ground, and there is a black dot there, and there should be some way of telling. There's a C, there's a C, there's a C. So that C means common. There should be some way of telling how to get it in there. And where's my, did I put it away? Oh my goodness, I put it away. There's no way to bend these legs out to hold it in place easily. So what I'm going to do instead is put down a piece of Scotch tape. Scotch tape, masking tape, they make this stuff called blue tack that you can use. I've got some of that around here somewhere, but I didn't feel like digging it out. All are good options. That was kind of an awkward angle. So what I did was I tacked down one end of it, and then I'm going to make an adjustment by heating it up and pushing it back home, holding it in place. And I am happy with that. Let's do the rest of them. All right, that takes care of the 2 resistor packs, because resistor pack 2 is not used. Then we have a bunch of capacitors to put in. There's two different kinds of capacitors here. Where's my board? And we're running out of parts. Only one of these was called for, so that one's technically a leftover. There's two different kinds of capacitors here. We have ceramic disc caps and we have electrolytic capacitors. The electrolytic capacitors have an orientation they're supposed to go in, a cathode and an anode, and these ones really don't have any way they're supposed to go in. I'm going to do the same thing with these that I do with the resistors. I'm going to put them in so that they all look like they're in the same orientation. When we get to those electrolytics, I'll show you how those work out. Okay, so for C7, it's here, but the label is here, buried under the IC, and there is a line that draws over to where C7 should go. Actually did a really good job. This board sits relatively flat. So here's where it gets a little interesting. The electrolytic capacitors. The electrolytic capacitors C3 and C5 will have a plus or minus symbol printed on them, and the plus wire is usually longer. So you can see that these two wires are different lengths. So the positive wire is longer. And then it says this part is polarized and must be properly oriented on both cases. And then doesn't give you any information on how that looks on the board. So let's start off with the 22 microfarad, which is C3. And let's find C3 on the board. C3 is up here, there is a minus, and then C5, there is a plus. So it says the positive wire is usually longer, and this black stripe here has a negative symbol inside of it. So we're going to put the negative symbol towards the negative symbol on the board. I know, weird, right? And let's grab the other one. 1 microfarad. And this is C5. And C5 is kind of the other way around. Again, we have the negative stripe there, but it's only positive indicated on the board. So we'll put the longer leg towards the positive symbol. And we'll hope for the best. Yep, I made a mistake. This capacitor doesn't go there. So I'll have to pull that out. I'm going to try something. Alright, so what I did was I started walking that out a bit and it got a little warm, which indicated to me I need to take a break. But it is moving, and there are lots of different ways to go about this process that don't involve burning your fingers. This is where having one of those soldering vices that flips over Alright, so that's all done. So I tried a couple of different ways to get that out. First I rocked it back and forth while adding some heat in order to get it out. And then I had to use some solder braid to clean up the holes and get rid of some excess solder. And then I had to use the solder sucker finally to get that last little bit out that was being really stubborn. But it's out now, and now we can put the proper capacitor back in where it belongs. And that happens sometimes. It's not a big deal. Life goes on. And I do have a desoldering iron that has a built-in vacuum pump and everything, but sometimes it's more of a pain to use than it benefits you. Alright, so that's all done. And then that makes this one here C10. Let's find C10. C10 is right there. Alright, and we will hope for the best on that. And I need C11 and C12, which are one of each. So we'll do C11 first. All right, must be that way. And then we'll do C12. I don't like this first joint that I did, so I'm going to redo it. Then I'm going to clean the tip of my soldering iron. I'm going to run it right through the middle of the two of them, which has done more to create a solder bridge than to remove a solder bridge. Okay, and then that takes care of those three, and that takes care of all of that sheet of stuff. That, like I said, was an extra one. I'm going to put that into the extra parts bin, extra parts bag, with the rest of the other extra parts until we learn something different. Transistors are up next. The transistors, prefix TR, go in the board as shown by the picture printed at their position, i.e. with their rounded corners facing the edge connector. And these are not terribly round in the first place. So there's TR1, where's TR2? Facing the edge connector. Well, there's not an edge connector there. Here's TR2. Okay, so facing the edge connector, facing that way. Let's take a look at these fellers here. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. It's noticeably rounded, not shockingly rounded like normal transistors are. Double check. Let's get it done. And the same thing with diodes. I have been told that transistors are heat sensitive, so I'm going to do these fairly quickly. Ceramic filter is not polarized and may be inserted either way around. Good, that answers that question. The ceramic filter has 3 legs on it, and I was worried which way it goes in. It goes into X1. All right, I think that is enough because we are all out of parts on both of those pieces of paper, except for the 7805. But we'll get the 7805 in the next video along with the IC sockets and everything because this video is getting a bit long. There is a video right over here I think you'll enjoy next. Thanks for being awesome.